you listen to reason? Will you open your eyes and to wonder what you'll find with an open mind? You may be surprised. Yeah, gotta get away from this illusion for the sake of the world. This delusion, it's gotta go. Yeah.
Hey everybody, we're live. Happy New Year. It's January 6, 2013. I'm Matt Dillahunty. Joining me this week, Tracie Harris.
Hello.
Yay. And I've been sick for 2 days, so I apologize if I sound all clogged up and stuff, but I've got lots of Sudafed to kind of hop me up for the rest of the show. This is a live call-in television program out of Austin, Texas. And before we start taking calls, how are you and what have you got going on?
I'm doing well, and I have, we mentioned Trolling with Logic.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll be on Trolling with Logic this month. And the only thing I really had to talk about was, it's something that we get a lot. It's an argument that we get a lot, and I don't even know what to call it. I'm sure it's a variant on a couple of different arguments put together, but it's basically what I'm calling the argument from agreement, or the argument from this makes sense to me and I got it to make sense to someone else and therefore it must be true.
Consensus or?
Yeah, it's almost like an argument from popularity that's sort of after the fact. If I can get enough people to agree with me and make it popular, then I'll know that it's true. And so what happens is somebody will argue with you using some sort of an argument which will ultimately never in any way have any mode of validation, verification, confirmation. So they're putting forward something and saying, I think this makes sense, and arguing it with you, like almost trying to convince you to agree that it makes sense, and yet ultimately there will never be any way to determine a truth value for it. So you just kind of wonder, where is this going? Mm-hmm. And ultimately it's like, don't argue with me, don't try to make me agree with you that this makes sense. If at the end of it, when I say, okay, I understand why you're saying it makes sense, how do we verify this? If the answer is I can't, then it's irrelevant whether I agreed with you or not, because we're both sitting there saying, I understand why you think this makes sense, and yet we can't assign a truth value to it because there's no way to verify it or validate it or confirm it. So it was just a useless endeavor as far as time wasting, if the ultimate goal was to somehow determine a truth value for whatever it is that you're trying to talk about. Mm. If you're going to assert that it's worth believing, then you're going to have to assign, you're claiming that there should be a value of true. And yet, without any means of confirmation, validation, verification, you're just sort of left with, it makes sense, but I don't know if it's true or not, because there are some things that make sense which do align with what can be demonstrated in objective reality without subjective bias. And there are some things that actually seem to make sense, and then when you test them, people are surprised that the outcomes are not what they expected. So just because something makes sense, or you would think that that would be an expected outcome, it doesn't mean that that's what you're going to get. And that's why people test things, because you have to remove biases. And sometimes what we think makes sense actually is not what's going on in reality. And so we have to find a way to differentiate those things that are reasonable but not true versus reasonable but true. And just because it makes sense to us is not really going quite far enough to assign a value of truth to it.
Yeah, I think it might actually qualify as an argument appeal to popularity.
Yeah.
Because I don't know that as a fallacy necessarily means that it requires a raw popularity,
right,
maybe a relative popularity.
It's just
amongst my friends.
Other people agree with me, and so I'm right. And yes, if you're assigning a value of true to it, then reasonable doesn't cut it. It has to be better than reasonable.
Yeah. So anyway, this is a live call-in show from Texas. We're going to start taking some calls here from around the world, starting with Marcus in Colorado Springs. How are you?
Matt, how you doing today?
Pretty good.
And Tracie.
Hello.
I got to say hi to you as well. I've watched both of you guys, and you guys are totally awesome.
Thank you. You're awesome too, clearly.
Thank you. Well, I just want to say something quickly, then I'll get to my question. I joined this group of free thinkers of Colorado Springs, mm-hmm. and one of the people they're going to have here next month, I believe, is Richard Dawkins. And then they were throwing out people's names of, okay, who else we could invite over. And, Matt, I hope you don't mind. I did throw your name out there. And I was telling them that, about the ACA down there. And, so hopefully you may possibly be seeing an invitation from us.
Okay, cool.
So
I was just in Denver.
Okay, great, yeah. So, but here was my question. From being in the military and just from my own personal life, I've seen so many things, religious, spiritual things, what have you. And one of the things that I've seen is like possessions, I guess. Spiritual people possessed by other spirits. And I had an argument with my cousin on Facebook the other day because he was saying, oh, well, that's true, though. Don't you believe in that stuff? And what I pretty much told him is, well, all I saw is people's voices that were different, and I've never seen any miracles perform in front of me. All I saw was words thrown out at us. So I'm like, so there's still no evidence, as far as I'm concerned, that it was true. And I guess I just want to get your take as to what do you guys think about stuff like that?
I agree. I don't see any reason I don't know how they came to the conclusion that it's demon possession.
Yeah, I don't either. I can't imagine how. I know that I got to see footage of recorded, I guess, what would be called possessions. They're labeled as possessions when I took anthropology, but it was strictly for, just like observing it. And it was what the populations themselves would refer to as a possession. And clearly, I don't believe that it's a possession. And a lot of times what was interesting to me is what they used some of these events in order to show the kind of bias that can occur during field research. So what would happen is we would read the account of the anthropologist who had looked at this event, that had been studying it. So there would be a video recording of it, and there would also be a written account of it. And when you read the written account, it was quite incredible. When you saw the video, it was quite less incredible. So a lot of times I think when people are actually in a situation, they are sometimes more impressed or more taken or I guess just sort of taken up with the situation. And they, even when they're trying to be objective and even when they are like a level-headed researcher, sometimes they can think that they're seeing things that they're really not. I mean, when you see the video played back, clearly some of the stuff's not happening. One of the things that I saw that I was very, very interested, couldn't wait till we got to witness like a levitation. The levitation itself, I would expect a levitation, just as a layperson, to be somebody not touching the ground. That's not what counts as levitation in these possessions. The levitations are merely contortions where, a lot of the body mass is off the ground. But it's certainly not something that's impossible. It's just something that's a contortion. And when you see it, it's not what you expect. So when you read these accounts and you see things like somebody recording that someone levitated, I can see how people reading it would think someone floated above the ground, sort of like what you see in The Exorcist. But that is not what's being described. And so I think sometimes people get misled by what's recorded and what is maybe put into literature on these things that isn't really what's occurring.
And from a strictly skeptical standpoint, you've got two different things. You've got the event or the phenomena, and then the explanation for the phenomena. And so we've witnessed something or we've had a report of something, and now we need to find out what the explanation is. And inevitably what you find is that when they're talking about, for example, demon possession, they are just asserting an explanation. They're not demonstrating it. They're not providing any evidence. There's no reason to think that, oh, well, wait a minute, what's your justification for calling this possession at all? Well, it sounds like possession, or it's weird, or okay, but now you're just kind of making appeal to what other people have said about this. Where's the actual evidence that this is a possession and not something else?
Yeah, in all the videos that we saw, I never once saw a demon.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in my situation, what it is I don't know if you guys I don't know if any of you are familiar with like Haitian culture, and because I am a Haitian.
Oh, okay.
And it was, I don't know precisely they call it demon, but they call it at least spiritual possessions. You see the person, all of a sudden their voice changes, and they're talking.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
And so I mean, I grew up actually seeing that in my own family.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing my cousin was arguing with me about. Say, well, don't you don't believe that stuff? You saw it and everything. And I told him, I said, well, in all actuality, not to disrespect my father or anybody, but I'm like, who's to say he wasn't high on crack and he just...
You don't even have to go that far.
No, you
mean, look up Extraordinary Popular Delusions and the Madness of Crowds, which is from the 19th century, looking into phenomenon like this where people in a group engage in hysterical behavior. It's very often, apparently it's something that's trained that we learn. And we see this with speaking in tongues and other things like that. That doesn't mean that there's not some supernatural force involved, but it's more plausible given that we see this, happen in a physical sense all over the place. There's no justification for reaching to the supernatural to try to explain it when we can at least begin to understand it in terms of this is what human brains do from time to time in certain circumstances.
Yeah, I don't even know if you can hear it or not, but Matt's got some kind of illness right now, and his voice has changed. I don't think it's a demon. I had the same thing actually a couple weeks ago, or something similar.
Demon.
And yeah, I had a severe voice change, and no demon as far as I'm aware. It was just flu or something, but.
No, I mean that makes sense.
Anyway, thanks a lot for calling in, Marcus.
Okay.
We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
You too now. Bye.
All right. We've got Shane in Phoenix. How are you?
Hey, Matt. Hey, Tracy.
Hello.
Thanks for having me on.
Sure.
Well, I was calling because I have checked your guys' previous atheist videos, and I was looking for a good debate Atheist Experience I had with maybe some theistic callers on morality, but I hadn't seen any. So then I looked at Matt's lectures on morality, and I still, I guess, leave not satisfied, I guess is the word.
Okay.
Because you haven't I hear your view of secular morality, and I was happy with that, hearing what you view on it. But I didn't actually hear any debates or counter views that was given with theistic debaters. So I saw your view, but I didn't see any theistic.
Did you watch? Did you watch? There's two debates online. One I did against Father Jacobsy, and another one, and I apologize, I've forgotten his name, but that were strictly about morality. And then there were several other debates that ended up being about morality. I don't know if you watched any of those. Now, if you did, then I guess they didn't present it either. So I just feel free to make your case or question.
Yeah, I wasn't content necessarily with Father Jacobsy. He's Catholic, first of all, and I'm not.
No, he's not Catholic. He's Orthodox.
Well,
yeah.
In the end, I wasn't. He went a different direction with the argument that I'm, apologetically that I didn't want to go. But
yeah, he agreed with me. He agreed with me for the entire debate, and then started talking about Nazis and porn at the end.
Yeah, and that was pathetic. But needless to say. But anyways, if you don't mind, I'd like to present my case and then see if you guys wouldn't mind engaging it.
Sure, but let me say this to start with. Depending on how you present it, we're probably going to interrupt you, and I'm not doing that to be rude. It's because in these things, we need to kind of get clarity and definition and agreement. Otherwise, we talk past each other, get to the end, and have to start all over.
Yeah, I will define my terms clearly and set up fences as we go through. That way, there's no confusion.
Okay.
Okay, so I've organized it into five premises, and I've led it to a conclusion. First premise, that man is naturally a moral being.
What exactly do you mean by that?
That we naturally come to conclusions of morality, of right or wrong, naturally. Whatever by means that is isn't the point, but we naturally do. Okay,
so if that's, for clarity, when you're saying man reaches moral conclusions naturally, are you saying that we all reach the same moral conclusions?
No.
Okay. So, and by saying naturally, haven't you destroyed your entire argument now? Because you've just asserted that there's a natural cause for this?
Whether the natural cause is external or internal isn't the point. The point is that man, in life, learns right or wrong.
Yes. But
okay.
There's, when you say that it happens naturally, I don't know where you're, that to me, that's a defeater for the claim that there's a supernatural source.
I'm not claiming supernatural here.
Okay.
I'm just saying man comes to conclusion. So if you want me to get rid of the word naturally, that's perfectly fine. It doesn't.
No, I'm
If
just.
that word makes you uncomfortable, then we can get rid of natural.
I was under the impression that you were going to argue for the necessity of a God with regard to morality.
Uh-huh.
Well, that's supernatural. And so if you begin with man comes by moral evaluations naturally, then you've already eliminated your conclusion at the outset.
No. I don't
Okay.
see where you're getting at. That's because I say that man comes to the conclusion of morality, whether naturally or supernaturally, is one way or another. The point is that man comes to morality,
Okay.
regardless.
Sure. Humans can reach moral evaluations of actions.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay. So can I move to the next premise?
Sure.
The next premise. Okay. We get our moral code or amorality from something or somewhere.
In what sense?
Whether other people or concepts or whatever.
Well, I don't know that I necessarily agree with that.
Okay.
Because I don't know.
Moral, you're moral, I'm moral.
Well, what you seem to be implying is that we learn this and that our entire moral sense is external, or derived from something external. And while I agree that we do learn things and that's the bulk of it, it's entirely possible that we may have an innate sense of fairness, for example, that we don't actually learn. I guess we would have to learn it.
Well, no, you have there's an innate sense of fairness, but what is fair is what you would learn culturally. Is that fair to say?
I mean, we have this idea.
No.
We have this.
No, it's pretty much demonstrated that there's an innate sense of fairness. Other social species have it as well, and that's been demonstrated in labs. You can show that dogs and chimps have an innate sense of fairness, and we have that same innate sense of fairness. We do learn culturally, though, what is fair. So
I'm not defining morality as fairness. You can look at something that doesn't affect you in any way or shape or form, whether it's unfair or fair, in your life, and you can say that's bad or wrong or good.
Well, when animal behavioral psychologists are looking at moral behavior in other species, they're looking for metrics of fairness, empathy, equity, and compassion. And if you
based on natural instincts of survival.
Correct.
But us, we as man,
we have
people,
those too. Yes.
We do have those two.
Correct.
But it goes beyond those.
Yes.
Well, we have a culture that sets a framework for that. So in other words, a dog has this sense of socialization and fairness, and you can train the dog. So a dog, for example, in a pack, a wild pack, would have these very visible, like, survival things that are happening that it uses that for. But if you have that dog in your house, you could, for example, use those innate senses to train the dog not to sit on a sofa, which has nothing to do with the dog's survival. It would just be this weird little random, arbitrary rule that you can get the dog to obey. So
it's called conditioning. The dog sees a goal, and he gets something for doing that, and so he repeatedly does it.
Some people, when they're talking about the moral sense, are talking about that innate sense of fairness, but there is a cultural component to it where your society does kind of dictate to you and get you to see things and say this or that is a fair situation.
Well, honestly, we're jumping ahead.
Okay.
My premise here, because I was going to get there. My premise here was that we get morality, right or wrong, if you want to call it fairness or unfair. We get it from somewhere. That was my premise.
Yeah, it's innate.
So I'm just setting up foundation as we move through. That's all.
Okay.
Hey, I'm still not super keen on this, but we can keep going. I think that the biggest problem I have is that there's some slop in the language, this implication that we get it from somewhere, as if there's some kind of code delivered to us, rather than this is the natural process of understanding actions and consequences.
Well, if you want to argue that we get it externally and it's not some natural code built into our genes, then you have to prove that. But from scientifically observation, we can only prove that we get it right from external means, other people, unfairness and fairness. But that's all I'm trying to do. I'm trying to use. So, anyways, it's okay. We move through.
Sure.
Okay. So, premise 3: atheism does not promote a moral code.
Yeah, that's
So it doesn't
irrelevant.
promote any, one way or another.
I don't know why that's a premise. It's irrelevant. Atheism doesn't purport to
So it's
have a moral
correct.
code. It's nothing. It's
Doesn't promote a moral code.
utterly
You're correct.
irrelevant.
Right, it's just there, it's a fence, because I've encountered people who disagree, but whatever.
Okay.
Yeah, we have two probably.
Yeah. Okay, so premise 4. This is the one we're going to stop at. It's also premise 5. I know you guys want to argue this one most. Premise 4 is that evolution, and I want to define my term evolution, natural selection, adaptation, and for everything from thereof, microevolution, does or promotes no morality, or better, relative morality.
I'm kind of at the point where I'm back to that original confusion because it produces that sense of fairness, but at the same time, it is the external environment that dictates to the thing that can determine fairness,
Right.
what is fair. So
Right.
the actual rule would be a social thing, but the sense of fairness would be an evolved trait, and that's demonstrably correct.
Right, well, depending where you're at in the world.
If we're talking about the external rules, then I would say, that's mainly probably going to be determined by survival, and in social species you're going to see a moral development, but it will be varied depending on where you're at and what group you're looking at.
I was going to say, depending on the external environment,
Sure.
the creature we will develop different codes, different places.
Sure.
My point still is here that we're naturally moral beings, and we get it.
But still, though, you're talking about just moral valuations, moral assessments, opinions, and saying that they can vary.
Sure. Which is
And-
true.
I'm sorry, say that again?
You're talking about moral evaluations and moral opinions, and that they can vary based on the situation. Fine.
Correct. We agree, I think.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But that's not moral relativism.
Well, people disagree across the world what's right or wrong.
But that doesn't mean that they're all equivalently correct or wrong. There's a difference between situational morality and moral relativism. Moral relativism is the idea that your culture necessarily defines what is or isn't moral, and that if a culture says, for example, slavery is moral, then that makes it so, and that's a position that I absolutely reject.
It would have to align with the moral metrics. It would have to align with fairness, equity, empathy, compassion. If it doesn't, then you may be saying that you're going to do it, but you don't have really a moral case for it.
Yeah, basically claiming something is moral and getting some people to
You can
agree
still
with
do
you
it, and you
doesn't
can
mean
still
that
say
it
you're
is.
going to do it, and no one's going to stop you. And you could even say that you think you have some right to do it. But if you're throwing fairness, equity, empathy, compassion to the wind, then it wouldn't be a moral evaluation. It would be an evaluation of something else, like a.
So you keep using this with fairness, with morality. I mean,
Yeah.
people do things that you deem unfair all the time, and they think it is fair.
Well,
I don't
well, hang on. There's a slight error here, and saying fairness is not the only criteria, and saying that something is unfair doesn't necessarily mean that we think it's immoral.
Correct.
Well, I kept hearing fair, so.
Well, yeah, sure.
Well, I had a little list, but.
I mean, morality is essentially about well-being, and she had a list of things that we use as evaluations for well-being. But just because something is unfair doesn't necessarily make it immoral. It's not the sole criteria. Otherwise, we wouldn't use the word moral. We'd just say fair.
Do you think taking away someone's freedom of speech is fair or unfair?
I don't think that's enough information to reach a conclusion.
Yeah, I don't either.
About whether it's fair or whether it's moral.
Well, no, so you don't think telling someone that they can't do something is wrong or right?
All right, well, when you say taking away somebody's, let's say, free speech right, what do you mean?
Freedom of speech, man. The amendment. Saying whatever you want.
Okay, well, I can't, for example, say to Matt, I'm going to go home now and get my Glock and come back and shoot you in the head. If I do, I'll be arrested. So society will put a hammer down on that free speech. I don't have the freedom to speak that. And I would say that the state has a vested interest in putting the hammer down on people that threaten physical violence openly in public. And so when you're talking about, I mean, I'm still speaking, and they're stopping me, basically saying, if you speak that, we will strip you of your freedoms. We'll take you and put you in a cage, or, you know, put you before a judge or whatever. So in that mode, I think I would support them telling me that I can't go around threatening people in that way.
And additionally, I'm a huge proponent of free speech, but free speech, First Amendment, by the way, doesn't mean that you get to say whatever you want, whenever you want, whenever. For example, you don't have free speech rights in my house or on my Facebook page. I have absolute control over who gets to say what, because those are domains that I control. This is about what you can say in the public spectrum. And there's a difference between public and private. So I was just wondering, you know, the way you phrased it, would I be opposed to taking away somebody's rights to free speech? Yes, definitely. But I wanted to make
based on what? Why?
But I wanted to make sure that you weren't misapplying free speech. You know, this difference between public and private, or this difference between, or the distinction of a justified limitation on speech.
Well, I'm just using freedom of speech as an example because she was saying based on fairness or unfairness.
Sure.
And that comes from culture. And so that from so far, it sounds like you're defining morality based on fair and unfair. That's all I'm saying. So I just...
No.
And then,
that wasn't a definition of... Wait, that wasn't a definition of morality. That was a situational question.
Well,
I mean, we weren't, well, yeah, but when you're talking about an example, you're not defining something, you're simply working through an exercise.
Well, we're doing observation here. I don't have to do an exercise, you can clearly see it's an example. It's something that's also tested and seen.
Asking somebody if a specific act or action is what they would evaluate as moral or not moral isn't really getting to everything that they're saying goes into that decision.
Well, whether we prove the law is true or not, or the rule is true or not, we use that example to if they break the rule.
The law is not true or untrue. It's just simply the law.
And the law isn't equivalent to morality.
Correct.
Well,
the law is not.
You guys agree that morality, we are natural moral beings, so.
Yeah, but that's not law.
You also argued in your seminar that there is such thing as objective morality.
Yes.
I read. And then you also said that objective morality is by pooled decisions of many who decide the most beneficial or goal-driven. No. Okay, so please redefine.
He's asking what you said, how you defined it in your speech, so you'll have to take
it's not just a mere thing about consensus. We are physical beings in a physical universe. We are subject to following physical laws, and so we can state truths about how things affect us. And if morality is about well-being, and it is, if it's not, then why are we using the word or talking about anything? There are certain baseline things. Life is generally preferable to death. I mean, that's not even up for debate. Death is obviously a violation of well-being. And you can begin with those simplistic things and build a system, which is exactly what I think we've done. But in any given situation, there is a finite set of possible actions, and you can compare those actions to other actions and determine that some of them are better than others, which means there is some set of one or more actions for any given situation that represent the moral pinnacle, the objective moral pinnacle for that situation. That's it. That's all I was saying. It doesn't say anything at all about whether this, matter of fact, the baselines can be arbitrary and subjective. I'm just talking about the objectivity of making assessments with respect to values.
Yeah, and not everybody even knows why they make the assessments. When they do studies with moral dilemmas, for example, there's a lot of people that answer those questions when they're asked to explain why they think something would be moral or immoral. They can't even explain it. Like, they haven't even thought it. There's not really even a thought process happening with them. They simply have adapted to some sort of deep internalize the rules, I guess, or the concepts, their cultural concepts, to such a degree that they have this sort of innate sense without really knowing why. Kind of like someone can speak very well their native tongue, like native English, but if you start asking them about the grammar rules, they may not be able to answer you or explain why these rules happen, and yet they can follow the rules when they speak.
But we have limited time. I want to make sure you get to this, because your argument is supposed to be getting to why God is necessary for morality. So I want to let you get there.
Why God is necessary? No, God is not necessary for morality.
Oh.
That's not where I'm going.
Well, where are you going?
I told you at the beginning. And sorry, I should have clarified. You're so used to theist calling saying you can't be moral unless you have God. I'm taking a little bit different approach. I'm saying because you are moral, it is the proof of the existence of God. Because we can't get an objective morality from anywhere else.
Okay, first of all,
then you're saying you can't be moral without God. That's what Matt just said.
Well, I'm moving through it differently. You're saying.
No, you're saying that there can be no morality without God, whether we recognize that or not.
Sorry, both of you are talking.
Sorry.
You're saying that You're saying that there can be no objective morality without God, whether we recognize this to be true or not.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not the first person to raise this. It's fairly common, and it's just. Well, first of all, I find it to be incorrect. And second of all, it's irrelevant because even if there is no objective morality, so what?
Well, then you have to admit that whatever a different culture decides is correct or wrong, then you must bow to it and then understand that, well, they decided their value principles. Who am I? I live in America.
Well, hey, you know what that sounds like to me? That sounds like Christianity. God has decided what's right and what's wrong. It doesn't matter if I agree with it. Who am I to agree? I mean, the theistic propositions for morality do not solve any of the problems that they claim exist within secular morality. If what is moral or not is determined by a dictate from a God, then that's not moral.
Well, it means people don't have morality at all.
Sure.
Let me ask you something. If everyone in America just obeyed the laws, would we have crime? Let me ask you that.
Well, that's cyclical. I mean, that's circular because the law. I mean, you could make laws that were heinous, and if everyone obeyed them, we'd have no crime.
But that doesn't make the law good.
Because crime would be whatever is going against the law.
That's the point. It doesn't matter if it's heinous or extreme. The point is if everyone obeyed it, would there be no crime?
That's correct.
Yes, because crime is defined as not obeying
the law. As a violation of the law. Thank you for the circular argument. But moral and immoral is not. You're making a transition here, and basically you're implying that something's moral just because God says so. So if God says that it's moral to kill your kid, is that right? And I'm saying that morality is more than just what any individual, God or not, dictates. That morality is necessarily about the well-being of thinking creatures, and that it is bound by the physical laws of the universe that we inhabit.
Yeah,
because of cause and effect.
If you don't even think about it, if you're not evaluating.
By the creatures, then when you look at other creatures who do things you disagree with, well, who are you to say that you disagree with them?
Because you can still make more reasonable arguments about what is best.
Based on what?
Based on the things that Matt was talking about earlier.
Reason, evidence, and empathy.
But that's goal-driven most beneficial means.
Reason? No, it's not. It's not simple consequentialism.
No, it's not simple.
It's not simple. Most beneficial. It's about reason, evidence, and empathy. It's about analyzing the consequences of actions with respect to goals, but also we can. I don't know why this is so difficult. We can evaluate whether or not something is better or worse than another action. We do it all the time, and the fact that we don't necessarily have one absolute best action doesn't mean that there isn't one, and doesn't mean that all answers are equivalent. And so even if there was no final objective standard, even though I think that's true within the bounds of situational ethics, that doesn't mean that all answers are equivalent. The culture that says that it's okay to mutilate the genitals of their daughters are just wrong. They don't just become right just because they say so. They're wrong because what they're doing is demonstrably harmful. It violates the principles of well-being. That is what morality is.
It's based upon consequences, but then you just got done saying, man, that it's based upon what's harmful and what they determine is. So doesn't that sound consequential to you?
I said it's not simple consequentialism. I apologize if you're not familiar with the terminology, but there is a philosophical concept within morality that is consequentialism. Where the reason I say it's not simple consequentialism is that consequentialism holds that it's the consequences that matter.
Well, right.
And I hold that there's more than that.
And I guess what I'm thinking in terms of is, for example, if someone says, I think it's better for me, that it's more healthy for me to drink Clorox every day, that I can demonstrate to them that's not correct. And if they said that they thought that it was best for their children, best for their children's well-being to give them Clorox every day, I could show them that that's not correct. And whatever their reasoning would be for why that is a good idea, maybe they think it helps boost their immune system, I can show them, okay, you think you're doing a good thing here, but since we don't have evidence this is boosting their immune system and we have evidence it's hurting them, then you should bow to the reasonable argument that this is not best for your children. There's no demonstrated reason to think that there is, and so you need to drop that.
Okay, so let's bring it down practically then, to a practical level. In America, it's deemed and studied and tested that drug use is unhealthy and it should be banned.
I'm on drugs right now and it's making me healthy. I'm on drugs right now and it's making me healthy. Might want to clarify that.
Wait, what? But that's not the drug. There are people who use it that's not unhealthy. So I'm not talking about you.
Oh, okay. So
I'm talking about the value principle.
Drugs can harm people in some situations, correct?
Yep, and you know what? But that's not all. For example, weed and alcohol. I mean, they can both harm people for sure, but that doesn't mean that they always harm people or that they're always harmful.
And the other thing is some of these drugs have a benefit. Well, but there's a cost-benefit ratio to everything you do. In other words, when I get in my car to get on the road, I take a risk of dying in a car accident, right? That's my risk that I take when I get in the car. It's dangerous to drive on the roads. You can die. And yet I get in the car and I drive, but I wouldn't say that there's a benefit to getting in my car and taking it somewhere. Because
there's no benefit to getting drunk except enjoyment.
That's a benefit.
It's a great culture and people in general, and yet we allow it. And yet
Wait a minute, what are you talking about? There are cultures all over the planet that brew beer, drink beer, sit around, tell stories, and get a little buzz on and hang out all night at a campfire.
Do you like music
at all? So it's more important to be social than it is to be healthy?
I'm not talking about...
No, stop. Please stop doing that. Please stop going to this is more important just because we say something. It's like a minute ago you said, well, that doesn't make drinking good. Well, when I point out these things, I'm not making an evaluation because, first of all, I understand that you need to address the entire situation, that making these simplistic blanket statements, like the ones religions like to make, aren't very productive. So when we talk about things, we need more information before we can make a determination. To say that drugs are bad, I mean, that's just stupid. You've divorced yourself from any conversation on the subject if that's as simplistic as you want to actually address it. Because, do you like rock and roll music?
No, I don't like rock and roll.
Okay. I don't know what to say to you then, because there's quite a lot of good music that came from drug use. There just is.
And also,
but it's relevant in the sense that people derived pleasure from it,
right.
And that doesn't mean that their pleasure necessarily overrides all these other factors. You have to do, as Tracie was pointing out, a cost-benefit analysis and figure out, is this predominantly good? Is it predominantly bad? Is it neutral? Is it undecided? Which is a valid position.
Weigh it. Do the negatives out, or the positives outweigh the negatives? That's what you're saying.
No, it's not. Well, first of all, it's not just about that simple thing in determining
because you've got agency.
What if someone walks up to me and says, because positive, that's what it sounds like. Someone walks up and says, hey, look, I will give $100 million to this scientific organization to help cure AIDS. And this is practical, okay? That's what really matters. I mean, we talk philosophy, but you got to bring it practical. For $100 million to help cure AIDS, if you go to this country that's in the middle of nowhere and you kill this guy, $100 million, and I'll give it to help cure it.
Yeah, so you're putting forward a moral dilemma, and there are a billion of these. And the fact is, some people will do this and say that this is what they would do, and there's some people that do this and they say this, I wouldn't do it, it would be immoral. We already agreed early on that different people come to different conclusions with moral evaluations. So this isn't something
relativity.
It's not relativity.
I'm sorry, but you don't understand, because what we're saying here is that we may not be able to tell at this moment which answer is in fact morally correct, but that doesn't mean that there isn't a morally correct answer. And it doesn't mean that just because we don't know the best moral position, that we cannot determine which ones are worse.
Right, and I would add that if you're simply going through a list of dictates and saying, I just do what I'm dictated to do by this dictator, then you're not even exercising a morality.
Yeah.
That's a system where morality doesn't even exist.
Yeah, it's not moral.
Matt, by saying you don't know, and then right after telling people that this is the moral code that we should uphold, you're being contradicting. Because
First of all, I didn't say that I didn't know, and then would you stop and let me finish? First of all, I didn't say I don't know, and then immediately state that there's a moral code that we should be living by.
Okay.
So why did you just say that I did? Why did you just say that I said that when I didn't?
Because a little while ago, you said we have these moral principles we abide by based upon the matrix of morality. There's negative to hell, positive to hell, and socialistic, and it can go.
I don't recall mentioning hell.
I don't either.
And I certainly haven't mentioned moral code.
And I was thinking moral principles. I don't think he's, depending on what you're calling
together
it.
everything you guys are saying.
Yeah, you're pulling together bullshit and accusing me. You're pulling together bullshit and accusing me of saying something. You portrayed this as if I said I don't know, and then immediately asserted that I did, and called me a hypocrite for doing it. When that's not what I did at all.
No, you did say previously, before I brought that up, that we don't know what the best objective morality is, but we can keep discerning what it is. But until you find the best one, the reality is you don't know it. You admitted to that. We're going to keep looking. But until then, from what we do know, we'll find that one is the best one.
Wait,
so
No. First of all, I said I didn't know with regard to a particular situation. There's a number of situations that we don't know. That doesn't mean we don't know in every situation. And second of all, I'm going to give you one last chance to explain why you just accused me of saying something and called me a hypocrite when I did not. Hello?
No, sorry, I'm here. I want to pick my words carefully. I don't want to offend you.
Well, it's not a matter of offense. It's a matter of we're trying to have a conversation here, and I know that perhaps that's what you thought you heard, but it's not what I said. I didn't say we don't know and then immediately say we have a moral code. As a matter of fact, I haven't advocated a moral code or a complete moral code in any sense. And so yet you're hearing this.
I did hear you say we don't know what the best objective moral standard is.
No,
to a particular question.
What I said is there are situations in which we may not know what the best answer is. That doesn't mean there aren't situations where we don't know, or where we do know. I'm talking about situational ethics, where for any given situation, by the way, all the situations are going to be different, but there are some that are similar enough that we can compare them and make these kind of intuitive. That's what we do, is we train our brain to act intuitively and make assessments, and we're not always right, but we're pretty good at it. We're good enough at it that we come up with general rules. We're pretty good enough. We're good enough at it that we can define murder, and we have enough of an understanding that we know that we, in the United States, for example, we have degrees of murder, and then we have other categories for where you've killed somebody that's not necessarily going to qualify murder. We've kind of distilled these things out because we recognize that the situation matters and intent also matters, and okay.
Okay, so you're saying there's no possible. No, you're not saying. I'm not implying you're saying this.
That's probably good.
Yeah, I'm done doing that. But let's say there's a neutral situation to us, me and you. We're looking at a situation of action and consequences that's neutral and doesn't matter.
Okay.
Two other men are looking at the same thing, and one of them decides that it's wrong, and then one of them decides it's good. Mm-hmm. Right, you're saying that, no, you're not saying that. Can there or can there not be a situation in this world like that?
I don't know.
Where there's something that happens that people disagree on what's the right thing to do, yes.
Well, in that sense, yes. But I mean,
But this is exactly what you would expect if morality comes from evolution.
Yeah.
I mean, you would expect that there's not going to be like a complete consensus on things. You would expect that there would be this general sense of fairness and that it's going to manifest differently within different cultures. What I wouldn't expect is that if a God on high is dictating rules, that what is the point of even having a capacity to evaluate things if I'm following a set of rules? And if that God tells me to do something and I don't evaluate it before I proceed with it, aren't I acting immorally? Shouldn't I be evaluating what I'm being told to do instead of just following a rule without question? Isn't it immoral to simply...
People do that all the time, and then they commit the crime because they evaluated it and thought they were right. It doesn't make them right.
I agree, but
Yes.
what I'm saying is that if you simply follow the rules of some dictator and you don't question it at all, aren't you being completely not moral? you're not being moral at all because you're not evaluating what you're being told. So you would still have to, even if it was a God telling you to do it, you would still have to make a personal judgment in order to be a moral agent to say this is correct.
Religious.
You would ultimately have to filter it through your own morality.
We're immoral unless we evaluate a moral decision.
No, religious.
We don't. We don't.
If you don't utilize your moral judgment and you simply do what you're told to do, then you are not acting morally. You are not acting as a moral agent, and morality is not even involved there. You are simply trained.
You're a robot.
Because a person doesn't think or meditate on if it's right or wrong to go marry a 12-year-old girl in a different country.
People think about it all the time.
Huh? Sorry?
What do you mean people don't think about that? There's debates about it.
Morality, if they want to do it or don't want to do it based on, but on a moral point is what I'm saying.
People argue the morality of that all the time.
But because they don't, does it make them immoral because they're not gauging it? As, is this immoral?
I didn't say it makes you immoral. I said it makes you not moral.
In the sense that you are not making a moral evaluation.
Any morality.
You're not making a moral evaluation.
Yeah, you're not a moral agent. You're simply a dog not sitting on the couch because someone told you not to sit on the couch. You don't even know why.
Divine command theory, the religious proposition that God dictates morality, is in fact immoral, and it forces you to sacrifice your humanity and pollutes your moral compass because you are stuck doing whatever this God supposedly says is good, whether or not it's actually good. And we already know that there are, for example, commands in the Bible that are not morally correct.
So compared to America then, or any government that says don't do this, and then you sit down and you think about it before you decide.
Hey,
Shane. Conclusion that it's wrong.
Shane.
Yes, and we do, and we can change that. We change laws all the time. That's correct.
America isn't a God dictating
Please
things.
note that we no longer have slaves in this country.
We changed because we learned that it was wrong. Exactly where's your Bible that's updated to show that slavery's wrong?
It sounds like you're trying to claim objective morality and then saying the Bible, but it sounds relative. But then you're saying the Bible needs to be relative and needs to change via more insight or something? I mean,
yeah, simply asserting that those heinous rules in that book are moral and that you follow them because they're moral, and then saying you don't even question them or evaluate them and that you somehow think that makes you a moral being is completely nuts.
It means you don't understand morality.
I do question and evaluate the reasons.
Then you're following your own morality then, aren't you?
No, I would follow it whether I was right or wrong. The point of the thought.
Okay, so what you're saying is you evaluate it as a simple waste of time exercise, because even if God tells you to do something and you think it's horrible, you would still do it because you would simply say, I just can't trust my moral judgment, which means that you would proceed following an order that you have evaluated as horrible simply because you were told to, and you think that makes you moral?
Hold on.
You think it's evil, but you're going to do it because somebody told you and you don't understand why they're telling you to do it, but you just trust it's good even though everything in your being says this is the wrong thing to do. And you're saying that's a moral action.
Because, first of all, because I say it's wrong does not make it wrong.
Correct, but it makes it in your head, you only understand it as wrong. You can't see how it wouldn't be wrong, but you're doing it anyway, which means that you are basically saying, I'm throwing my moral compass out the window, my morality out the window, and just following an order.
It could be wrong, too.
It could be, but it's the only compass you have. And what you're saying...
True.
What do you mean?
The moral compass I have is, by the way, according to the Bible, which you're trying to discredit, I know that's where you're going, is depraved and lost, and it's full of sin and evil. There's no way I could understand good in the first place.
So then why do you evaluate these rules from God that you just told me earlier I do think about? Why do you even think about it if you know that your thoughts are corrupted and can't be trusted? Why even bother wasting an ounce of energy trying to decide if your actions are good or bad when you're simply going to follow orders in an unthinking fashion in the end?
And why do you believe?
You don't understand Christianity. The whole reason
I do.
Understand the morality.
I understand it. I understand that it's basically telling people to throw their morality out the freaking window and follow orders.
And why do you believe?
Wrong. And you're
No, it's not wrong.
Saying that we're throwing morality out the window.
You are.
Wait. Did you say it's because she was brought up wrong?
I don't think that's what
Yeah, whatever Christianity she learned about isn't Christianity. The whole reason we can gauge.
We were the wrong type of Christians.
It doesn't matter because whatever Christianity I was raised in is irrelevant because you've already admitted that this is what the Christianity you believe in says. You basically said that you would throw your moral opinions out the window, that if something seemed just completely vile and evil to you, if God told you to do it, you would do it anyway because you do not trust yourself, which means that you are saying that people, although they are moral agents, it's an irrelevancy because they need to not use their morality. And they need to not morally evaluate anything. They need to just do what they're told and not think about it and throw their morality out the window. That is exactly what you said.
And what's Shane, and what's particularly ironic about this is that you believe your moral compass is polluted because that's what your book that wants you to obey is telling you.
Well, the other
I
issue.
can see evil in this world. I don't have to.
The other issue. Here's the other issue.
No.
Wait, I have a question. How did you come to the conclusion that your God is moral if you're not able to make a moral judgment?
Restate that question.
You think that your God is more moral than you, and if you can't trust your moral judgment, how do you know this God is moral?
The same thing I said to Matt. I can see in this world that there's a lot of evil, and when you look at man, you just see bad things everywhere. The natural question you come to is maybe you shouldn't trust, others or yourself on what's right or wrong.
That didn't answer her question.
But you're saying
your own moral code that you break all the time.
No,
you have decided that this God is the moral compass to follow, and what I'm saying is, how have you determined that this God is moral if you have no way to morally evaluate it?
Hey, listen, I can tell you this. He's definitely more moral than us. Have you looked at
How do you know? You have no trustworthy morality. So how can you make an evaluation that it's more moral than us?
What are you talking about?
You said your morality is corrupted and not trustworthy. And now you're saying this God is more moral than us, and I'm saying how did you evaluate that since you have no trustworthy morality?
When we do and say and think the same things that we say is good, that's also imprinted on the morality of God that's given to us.
Then why do people all think different things are moral? And
because of corruption, because of depravity, because no one.
Can you trust your moral judgment?
I trust God's moral judgment.
Okay, then you made a judgment that this God is moral, and I'm wondering if you don't trust your moral judgment, how did you make that judgment?
That's not a moral. That's an intellectual judgment.
You're saying he's moral, so it is a moral judgment. How did you evaluate God as moral if your capacity to evaluate morality is not trustworthy?
Okay, this is where it goes back before where I said you didn't understand Christianity.
Shane.
No.
Shane.
No, listen, you're not letting me finish.
Shane, you're damn right I'm not. Shane, Christianity is irrelevant to this. It wouldn't matter if you were a Buddhist, a Hindu, a Muslim, or whatever making this claim. You have asserted that you have a corrupt moral compass, and then you have also asserted that you have made a valid moral determination about another entity. Those two statements are in direct conflict.
A complete and corrupt moral compass until the supernatural moral entity decides to fix it.
How do you know it's fixed?
Clear and foresight.
How do you know it's fixed?
It's not. Well, it's not fixed because you've already said that if God tells you to do something, even if you felt like it was wrong, you would still do it. So you've already said previously that you still, even as a Christian, you don't trust your moral judgment.
And
I apologize, Shane, but go ahead.
No, that's okay. You apologize for?
Because we've almost completely run out of time. You've dominated the entire show to tell us how immoral you are.
That's very funny. So you don't think you're immoral in any way? Let's put it down, please. You don't think you're immoral?
I absolutely think that I have done many things that are immoral.
Immoral. So you admit that you're evil too. That's pretty much it. You admit by your own conscience.
Well, I don't know that that's a necessary accurate summation. The fact
yes or no, you've done bad things that you've committed.
This would be fun. Have I done bad things? Yes, I already said so.
Okay, so by your own admission, you're a bad person.
No.
He's done good things. Does that make
I've done
him a good
things.
person?
Yeah. Does that make me a good person?
I mean, how many times do you have to do a bad thing to be a bad person?
How many times
I
do
don't
you have to
know.
do a good thing to be a good person?
You're the one coming up with this this kind of simplistic structure. So you tell me, how many bad things do I have to do versus how many good things in order for you to qualify me
Well,
as
you
a
know
good
what
or
they
bad
say,
person?
screw one sheep,
It sounds
right?
like you're dodging my question.
No, well,
You just asked me a question instead of answering mine, which was, you admitted you did a bad thing.
hey, when did you stop beating your wife? Oh, you don't want you want to dodge that question? I'm pointing out that your question's stupid. It is ill-formed. It does not have enough information. The fact that, hey, have you ever done anything bad? Yes. Well, then that makes you a bad person. Does it? Does it really? Does doing something bad? Isn't there some sort of scale? I'm asking questions to follow up.
Prove it, doesn't it?
So don't accuse me of not answering your question when I answered it and asked a follow-up. If you're dishonest again, I'm just going to write you off as too damn immoral to even talk to.
Well, we're almost at the end of the call anyway. I mean, we're at the end of the show.
Are you making a joke there? You just got done saying that.
I think it was tongue-in-cheek. I think you're more moral than your God, and you just haven't figured it out yet.
Yeah, I think pretty much everybody is. But
So why is God so immoral? First of all, why is God so immoral?
I don't know. Why don't you ask him?
yeah, first of all,
I would love to know why he's so freaking immoral.
I don't think that God exists, but if we're talking about the God character in the Bible
Right.
as God is represented,
written, it's horrible.
You know, it's a pretty horrible, jealous, angry being that advocates slavery. I don't know why he's that way. Maybe he's
I
just
said
a
to
dick.
somebody earlier today that you either have a God who sends child rapists to rape children, or you have a God who simply watches it and says, when you're done, I'm going to punish you.
Does child rapism make you mad, Matt? I mean, do you hear about that and get angry? Yes or no?
What?
Do you get angry when you hear about a child rapist?
Yes.
Well, so why shouldn't God get mad when he hears about evil in this world? You tell me that.
If there was a God and he heard about evil in this world, I think he should get
Well,
mad.
here's the thing, though.
What the hell's that got to do with anything?
If I were in a situation where I could stop a child rapist, I would. That's the difference between me and your God.
Yeah.
What? Sorry, say that again.
If I could stop a person from raping a child, I would. That's the difference between me and your God. He watches and says, I'm shutting the door and you go ahead and rape that child. And when you're done, I'm going to punish you. If I did that, people would think I was a freaking monster.
Yep.
First of all, you portray that little girl as someone who's innocent. She's just as evil
Well,
as
I was
you.
thinking it was a little boy.
Bye.
So
Goodbye.
children deserve to get raped. There's your-
Goodbye, you piece of shit.
And I would like to just say that, well, let me just say, I was raised in a different Christianity, and I think it was a better one.
Yeah. You know what? I was a better Christian than you when I was a Christian, and I still am.
Yeah.
Jethro in Houston, we only have like 30 seconds. I apologize.
Sorry.
Oh, man.
I'm so sorry.
But your call was about morality, and that's what we've been talking about.
Did we answer
Yeah, I
it?
know. It was. I don't even know that I want to talk anymore. That was scary.
Oh,
Well, send me an email and call back another week.
we're sorry.
All right, y'all are gonna cut me off
Or
in a second, right?
Can we hold and do after show with him?
We can.
Well, stay on.
No, I have to go. They're
I
putting up the
can't.
credits. Tracie can.
I'll call back.
All right, thanks.
Okay.
So we got basically 2 calls in on this show.
That was an excellent call, though.
I loved it.
I'm glad we got to talk
Right
about
up to the
that.
point where he admitted what a colossal piece of shit that he is.
Loved it.
And actually, I think he's better than that. I think at that point he's flailing around making excuses because he's just desperate.
I love that call.
But thanks to everybody. I won't be here next week. I'll be in San Diego talking about morality. But I think Russell and either Martin or Jeff D will be on. I know they switched. We'll see you then.